Bend Around the Wind by Skylia. Chapter 77. Earth. Day 1. Juyu did not look around at first. She just moved to get in cover. It was something Loki told her many times. She needed to think about defense first and offense only after that. So she ran and plastered herself to the wall behind one of the giant rocks in the room. She usually thought that they were silly because why would you use big rocks as decoration? But now she was more than happy about it. Stark ran in a different direction, obviously, to take cover too. Then smoke started filling up the room, and Juyu had no time to warn Stark when more glass exploded. She wasn't even sure what it was. She just watched in shocked horror as Stark fell and landed on the floor with an unpleasant smack. She wanted to run to him right away, but then she finally noticed the intruders. They were all wearing black clothes, masks, helmets. They all looked the same, even their guns. She saw enough Earth films to recognize the gear, so they had to be human. She waited, her blood rushing in her ears, her heart up in her throat. She felt like she was breathing so loud that everyone in the room could easily hear it. Jarvis was warning the intruders that the authorities were on their way, while Juyu's mind was racing with possibilities. She couldn't wait for help to come, not when Stark was down, not when the men were slowly walking closer to him through the thin veil of smoke. When she noticed the blood pooling next to Stark, she realized that there was no time to plan. She jumped out from behind the rock as soon as some of them were close enough. Loki told her that fighting unarmed against multiple enemies was risky. If they had weapons, the odds were even worse. It was not impossible, though. She had to be fast. She had to move constantly and never give them an opening. The first man she reached was the easiest to take down, a kick to the lower ribs, then on the knees, and he was down, a shout of pain coming from him. The second guy already turned towards her. Juyu elbowed him in the throat, then grabbed him around the neck and tossed him over her shoulder. She didn't dare think about her chances or how they were obviously shooting at her now that she lost the element of surprise. She moved between them, trying to put at least one of them in the way of the others so that they couldn't shoot her. She had to get to Stark and out of here. She grabbed the arm of another one, twisting the gun out of his hand sharply, then kicking him in the back of his knees and hitting him in the head with the gun. Then she had to drop down because she was open. Nobody shielded her from the other assailants. She managed to roll over and scramble behind a sitting chair. The gun, rifle, was a strange one, a lot thinner than what she saw in films, and she had no idea what it could actually do. She knew she couldn't hide there for long, but she did not know how many of them were left. The smoke helped them, but at least it helped her as well. Still, it wouldn't take long for them to find her again. She also only got a little closer to Stark. She was panting heavily, her heart still beating wildly in her chest, and she wondered if these were the only intruders or if there were others. She knew they were coming closer, and she didn't know how much help the rifle would be, but she hung on to it. When one footstep was way too close to her liking, she moved again. She felt a stab of pain in her side, but managed to move over to a hidden counter while dodging. She looked down and saw a little silver cylinder standing out of her side. She yanked it out right away, finding a thick needle at the end of it. That wasn't good, not good at all. One of the men got close to her again, and Juyu jumped at him, slamming into him with her whole body. The impact made him lose his gun, and they both landed on the floor with a heavy thud. It left her defenseless against the others. How many were there? Then a dark blur flew across the room, landing on the floor with a smack. Juyu turned and wanted to sigh in relief because she'd never been so happy to see Hatchet. The elf grabbed another one of the men, just taking a fistful of his clothes and tossing him at a wall. The few remaining ones, even two who were on the floor, raised their rifles, but Hatchet's hands were already burning with magic.
"Oh, just try,"
Hatchet said and attacked. There were shooting. Juyu saw more of the silver things standing out of furniture and walls, but she had no doubt that Hatchet could hold his own, so Juyu ran to Stark. He wasn't shot, thankfully, but he had a piece of glass sticking out of his shoulder. It was bleeding pretty badly, plus a head wound. Juyu had to grab him and drag him to relative safety.
"Jarvis, are we getting help?"
she shouted as the sound of fighting continued. She really hoped that Hatchet was kicking butt. The surprised and even panicked shouts of the unknown men told her that he was. She glanced out, and yeah, Hatchet was even less gentle than Juyu had been. He did not mind to break bones or even to toss some of them out of the window. He fought like Loki in many ways. He was too quick and too strong for most humans. She wasn't sure whether he actually killed any of them. She didn't really care.
"Dr. Banner is on his way,"
Jarvis said. Well, warned them, actually, because not even a second later, Juyu heard the roar. It was not like anything she's ever heard before, but she knew what it meant right away.
"Hatchet, get out of the way!"
she yelled across the room. The elf's head shut up at her voice, and he didn't hesitate to run. Just in time, too, because a wall shattered to pieces, a giant green body smashing its way through it. Juyu leaned over Stark to shield him from the debris. The Hulk made the men run, even the injured ones trying to scamper out of the way. The Hulk was angry, and Juyu feared that it meant that this was not the only part of the house that was invaded. Bruce must have been caught by surprise. Her mind immediately went to Bee, but she had to hope that she was fine. When Juyu lifted her head, she froze, because Hatchet was still in the Hulk's line of sight, slowly edging away from him to get closer to Juyu and Stark. The elf kept a steady gaze on the Hulk, one hand raised in a placating manner. The Hulk stared at him for long moments, and Juyu felt her whole body tense. And then the green beast turned and roared at the men still trying to collect their injured pals and charged towards them, picking up one of the rocks and throwing it across the room. Juyu just leaned over Stark again when more debris fell. She was almost startled when another body dropped down next to him, but it was just Hatchet. The Hulk roared again. Juyu dared to raise her head when she couldn't feel more plaster hitting her neck. The Hulk grabbed the couch and tossed it after the men who were trying to retreat, carrying their injured comrades out with them through the broken windows. There had to be cars or planes out there, she didn't know. "Juyu, let me look at him," Hatchet said, and Juyu leaned back. Her head felt impossibly numb while her heart still raced. The Hulk dashed across the room and out of the window, breaking some of the wall on his way out. Hatchet didn't try to wake him up. He shed his shirt and tore it in half. "I'm gonna yank the glass out, and you need to press down on the wound while I bandage it." "Okay." Juyu nodded. Hatchet lifted Stark a bit and put the fabric under his shoulder, preparing it for use. "Ready?" he asked then. "Yeah." She nodded again. Hatchet grabbed hold of the piece of glass and pulled it out swiftly. Juyu immediately pressed down on the deep wound, while Hatchet quickly wrapped it up to stop the bleeding. Stark thankfully didn't wake up for it. "He hit his head, too," Juyu said when she let go. She really hated the feel of warm blood on her fingers. She wasn't squeamish, but it was Stark. He was hurt, and she still had no idea what was happening. "It's good that he has a thick skull, then," Hatchet said. He put his palm on Stark's forehead, and his fingers flared up with a flash of violet. Stark opened his eyes and sucked in a sharp breath, trying to sit up right away, but Hatchet kept him on the ground with a firm hand on his chest. "Easy, Stark. Stay down," Hatchet said. "What the heck?" Stark asked, then winced in pain. "We were attacked," Juyu reminded him. "Jarvis?" Stark asked. "It appears that they have approached the house by Jarvis reported. "I am incredibly sorry, sir, but they still seem to be blocking my senses. I cannot pinpoint the location of every intruder. I lost visuals on 56% of the perimeter. They do seem to retreat, though." "They're aircrafts?" "The Hulk is taking care of that problem, sir." "Bruce is still here. Oh, thank God." "And Colonel Rhodes is on the line for you," Jarvis added. "Okay, patch him through. Come on, let me sit up," Stark said, and Hatchet relented, helping him up slowly. Tony, what's going on?" Rhodey asked right away. "No idea," Stark said. "My house is almost half destroyed." "But are you alright?" Rhodey asked. "I'll live," Stark said. "It looks like they did not expect the Hulk, and now they're running." "I'm on my way there," Rhodey said. "No, wait. I need something else." Stark said, his face shifted into something determined. "I need you to clear the skies for me." "How clear?" Rhodey asked. "I'm gonna bring my ship down from space, and I don't want anyone shooting at it," Stark said. There was a moment of silence, then Rhodey agreed. "I could definitely do that," he said. "Jarvis," Stark said then, "as soon as Rhodey says the air is clear, bring down the Iron Mage." "Yes, sir," Jarvis confirmed. "But I'm still coming, Tony," Rhodey said. "I think we're safe now," Stark said, but he didn't sound too certain. They did not know if the intruders cleared out from every part of the house, after all. "I'm not just going because of your safety," Rhodey said. "Yeah. Okay, that would be good." Stark agreed then. "I'll be there soon," Rhodey said, and the line went dead. "Jarvis, are there more of them, or did they all flee?" Stark asked. "I do not know, sir," Jarvis replied. "Like I said, my senses seem to be blocked." "Bee?" Juyu asked. "She was in her room at the time of the attack, but I can't get live feed from that part of the house at the moment," Jarvis said.
We need to search the house. Stark said, I have taken the liberty to inform the police and the Avengers about the attack. I could not reach Miss Potts yet. Jarvis said, Captain Rogers is waiting to speak with you. He can wait, Stark said. Tell him we have issues to deal with. Help me get up. Hatchet didn't argue this time, and he grabbed hold of Stark's arm on the uninjured side and pulled him to his feet. He did not let go of him, though. The moment Stark was upright, he paled to a sick ashen color, doubled over, and threw up. Hatchet was still holding on to him, so he didn't fall over. Hatchet cursed. Okay. Concussion, Stark said after he gulped down some air and wiped his mouth. I'm good now. I sincerely doubt that, Hatchet said. Yeah, make sure I don't fall asleep, and I should be fine. Stark said. Your shoulder's still bleeding, too, Hatchet added. Stark glanced at it. But it's not bleeding that badly, so I'm gonna be fine for now. Juyu knew that tone of voice. It meant that there was no point arguing with him. Juyu agreed in a way. They had to make sure the house was secure before they took care of their injuries more thoroughly. She stood up as well. Then she had to grab hold of something because her vision blurred. Juyu! Stark immediately reached out to steady her, even if he was not steady on his feet himself. He managed to stay upright without help, but she had to shake her head a few times before it cleared out. Are you injured? Hatchet asked. I was shot, she said. But it's not... She looked around and reached out to the closest silver cylinder she found. Stark frowned deeply. Tranq darts, he said, taking it. Supposed to knock you out. So they were here to capture, not to kill, Hatchet said. Who are they? No clue. Let's get them out of here first, then we can talk. Juyu couldn't agree more with that. Sure you're fine? Stark asked her. I'm supposed to ask you that question, she said. You're a lot worse off. I'll be fine. Let's move, he said. Hatchet finally deemed him well enough to walk on his own because he let go of his arm. Jarvis, how's the Hulk situation? He's on the roof, sir. Keep me posted, Stark said. Let's go. Hatchet pointedly walked in front of both Stark and Juyu. She could understand why, even if Juyu shook off the effects of the tranquilizer. Close combat was still not her forte, and Stark was injured. Hatchet was stronger and faster than both of them. It made sense for him to face any possible danger first. Not even Stark complained. For all his stubbornness, he was anything but stupid. They slowly moved over to the areas of the house that were blank for Jarvis. They suspected that the intruders all fled when the Hulk came out to play, but they couldn't be sure. Stark's workshop seemed to be locked off, as it should be, so they obviously did not get in there. If technology was what they were after, they didn't get it. She wasn't sure that was the reason for the attack. Like Hatchet said, they wouldn't have used tranquilizers if they were not here to capture someone. Were they after Stark or the rest of them? She knew that humans tended to be wary when it came to visitors from other planets, but she knew they wouldn't get answers just yet, so she tried to ignore the questions in her head for now. The timing of the attack was all too perfect, too. She didn't need to point that out. Stark and Hatchet were both very much aware of this as well. The fact that these people seemed to have so much information about them was disturbing. Only a couple of hours passed since Loki, Thor, and Drongo left Earth. Bruce was supposed to leave Malibu even sooner than them. It was sheer dumb luck that he randomly decided this morning that he should stay until Loki and Drongo left. Not that Juyu believed that they would have been completely vulnerable without the Hulk. Sure, they caught them by surprise and managed to partially blind Jarvis and injure Stark, but they still would have been able to kick their stupid butts on their own. She wasn't sure whether she should be insulted or glad that they were underestimated. Loki always said that being underestimated was both infuriating and useful. She could understand very well now what he meant. They didn't stumble upon any more intruders so far, but Juyu was still on edge and her palm itched for a gun. Sadly, all of their weapons were down in Stark's workshop, and they didn't want to waste time with that detour, not until B was found. She did not worry that much. B was stronger than she was, and she could easily take down a couple of humans, armed or not, but it was still unnerving to not know where she was. A loud metallic crack sounded from above them, and they all stopped abruptly, looking up at the ceiling. Then the walls shook a little, and a few large cracks appeared above them, plaster falling down. That's not good, Stark said. Sir, stand back! Jarvis warned, but they were already moving away from where the ceiling was caving in. They barely made it to the end of the corridor when the ceiling broke from whatever smashed into it.
There was smoke and debris and something green and something black. Then things exploded. Gold and orange flames erupted and filled up the whole corridor in a matter of seconds. Hatchet backed them off to the wall and raised his arms. The fire engulfed them a moment later, but stayed outside of an almost invisible circle. Juyu could still feel the heat on her skin, but the flames could not touch them. Magic. She really, really loved magic, especially when it prevented them from burning to crisps. Water started pouring down from the ceiling only a few seconds later, extinguishing the flames slowly but surely. The walls, ceiling, and floor were all scorched, but they were unharmed. That's what matters. Holy crap. Stark breathed out in relief, his body just as tense as Juyu's. Hatchet, I officially love you. Hatchet chuckled and dropped his hands in the shield of magic once the flames were gone. They immediately got drenched in water, but Juyu really did not care. When they looked over to the other side of the corridor, the Hulk was getting up from under the rubble and the still slightly burning body of what was probably some plane. He simply shook himself until everything was off of him and looked around. His eyes almost immediately landed on them. Then he started walking closer. So, he knows the difference between friend and foe, right? Hatchet asked quietly. I think so, Stark said and pushed forward to stand mostly in front of Hatchet. Jarvis, fire's gone. Turn off the water. The sprinklers turned off a moment later, and suddenly there was complete silence besides the heavy footsteps of the Hulk. Hey, buddy, Stark greeted long before the Hulk got close. It's been a while, but I hope you still remember me. You totally saved my life that one time. Good times. So I really hope you're not about to turn us into pancakes. The Hulk stepped a few feet away and gave them a steady look. Of course not, he said then. Okay then. Juyu relaxed a little. Oh, it's really been a while, Stark said, obviously surprised. You're hurt, the Hulk said, pointing at Tony's bloody shoulder and head. I'll live. Stark shrugged it off. Did all of them leave? 2 jets flew away, Hulk said. I didn't go after them. That's good. Okay, defense first. Good call. Stark nodded. Thanks for helping. You're my friend, Hulk said simply, then turned around and walked back towards the big hole he left in the ceiling. Where are you going now? Stark asked. See if there are still some left outside, Hulk said, then climbed out of the hole without looking back at them. All right then. Stark nodded. We should get moving, Hatchet said. He smoothed some of his wet hair back to get it out of his face. The water dripped from Juyu's clothes, and her hair was only a minor inconvenience. She was kind of glad that it washed away Stark's blood from her hands. My senses are picking up on some movement, Jarvis said then. The voice came out scratchy and broken up. The speakers must have gotten damaged in the explosion. First floor, southeast corridor. I have no visual. Let's go, Stark urged them. They found a corpse first, one of the men in black clothes. A pool of blood around him, his shoulder almost completely cut off from his body. There was no question now that the Demutrak, Juyu, and Stark were not the only ones who infiltrated the house. Juyu knew the wounds her sister's axes left all too well, so she wanted to hurry, wanted to run, but she knew it would be stupid to get separated, and Stark was not exactly up for running right now. She worried more now because there could still be some of the masked men inside the house, and Bee was on her own. She knew she wouldn't relax until they found her. There was blood on some walls and bloody footprints on the light-colored carpet. Hatchet walked at the front, Stark behind him, Juyu following Stark. It was too quiet, no sound of fighting nearby. Juyu didn't know whether that was reassuring or worrying. The Iron Mage is on its way, sir, Jarvis announced suddenly. Juyu was annoyed that she startled at his voice. Good, Stark nodded. I want it right above the house when it gets here. Full dispense mode. Use your database for alignment classifications. How should I catalog S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Avengers? Jarvis asked. Neutral, for now, Stark said after a moment of silence. Everything unknown is hostile. As you wish, sir, Jarvis confirmed. The police are on their way as well, ETA in 5 minutes. They should stay outside, Stark said. They can surround the perimeter, but they shouldn't come inside. I will forward your instructions, sir. Do you think they will attack us again? Juyu asked. I don't think so, but better safe than sorry. I feel stupid enough as I am. You couldn't have known that this would happen, Hatchet said. The house should be secure, Stark said. Jarvis, run full diagnostics. I want to know how they blinded you. In progress, Jarvis told him. Correcting the errors might require your personal input. I'll look into it once we're sure that we're safe. I assume you do not want me to call an ambulance for you, Jarvis said then. May I contact Dr. Algren then? I'm still paying him? Stark asked in surprise. You do, sir, Jarvis said. Yes, okay, he's fine. Get him here. Hatchet put up a hand and stopped. What is... Shh. Hatchet turned his head and listened to something. Juyu tried to do the same, trying to hear what caught Hatchet's ear. The thundering bangs rang in the corridor, several in a row, clearly audible for them all. Gunshots, Stark said. Juyu felt the blood drain out of her face. Bee! She said and ran. Go. Just find her. Stark yelled obviously at Hatchet, but Juyu did not pay attention. She just ran where the sound came from. She jumped over another body, bloody like the previous one. She saw gashes on the walls, the marks of Bee's axe, the signs of a fight. She ran faster. The last body was crumpled in a corner, a handgun in his hand, and when Juyu turned, she felt the world slip away from under her feet. Bee was on the ground, one of her arms still shifted into an axe, and there was blood, too much blood. She ran over to her and dropped down on the floor. Bee's eyes were open, but there was blood, so much blood. Bee! She called. There were a few tranquilizer darts standing out of her, and Juyu immediately started pulling them out. But those did not cause the bleeding. There were other wounds, worse injuries, and more than just one. Bee finally turned her head, looked up at Juyu, her eyes focusing. You're gonna be fine, Juyu told her. She already stripped down her top to press the fabric on the wounds that bled the most. Just hold on, you're gonna be fine. Juyu's eyes widened and thought for a moment that she was hallucinating too, but no. Her lips moved, and she... I'm here! I'm right here! She said, her breath coming out in ragged gasps without her permission. There was so much blood, she needed help. Hatchet! She shouted as loud as she could, never taking her eyes off her sister. It's gonna be okay, she said again. Bee reached out and touched her arm, like she wanted to reassure her. She's supposed to reassure Bee, not the other way around. Where the heck was... Loki, Bee said quietly, her voice too weak and too hoarse. Juyu wanted to cry, or maybe she already was. He's not here, she managed to say. Then Hatchet was there, finally dropping to the floor and moving Juyu's hands away to assess the damage. He swore and breathed out. His eyes were taking in the wounds. Do something, Juyu asked him. I need help, I can't... I'm not a healer, I can't do this alone, Hatchet said. His voice was a little higher and quicker than usual. You have to! I need help! Hatchet said more firmly. His fingers were already burning with magic, but he just kept them pressed to Bee's chest. Doc's on his way, Stark said from the doorway. His eyes were too wide as he stared at Bee. I'll try to get Bruce back. He didn't wait for an answer, already turned and hurried away. Juyu knew that she should have been worried about him because he was in no condition to just run off alone, but she couldn't spare the thought. Because Bee... She was... Her eyes were closed now. She was barely breathing. You have to do something! Juyu shouted at Hatchet. I'm already doing something! He said, his eyes focused on Bee, his hands covered in bright violet light. What? I'm giving her more time, Hatchet said. That's all I can do. We need to stop the bleeding, Juyu said. I can't do that. There are bullets. They need to be taken out, Hatchet said. But I'm keeping her alive until help comes. But let me focus, Juyu, Hatchet snapped. I'm doing all I can, he added more quietly. Juyu fell silent. She sucked in a few harsh breaths and tried to calm down, even if just a little bit, but she couldn't. She couldn't do anything. She reached out and grabbed hold of Bee's hand. It's gonna be fine, she said, sniffing and trying to blink away the moisture in her eyes. You're gonna be fine. She doubted Bee could hear her. The words were more for her own benefit, more of a wish than a reassurance, but it was all she had.